Okay, well, welcome everybody to the fourth of a series of webinars for Project Management Awareness Month. We're delighted with the attendance so far, and so we really appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. We have a few administrative things we just need to run through. As a not-for-profit organisation, PMI is reliant very heavily on our sponsors, so we just like to acknowledge them at the beginning of the webinar. So Mill Pond training providers for project management exams, they have specifically asked me to mention tonight that they have a 5-day PMP or CAPM classroom course in both Auckland and Christchurch starting in October for anyone looking to sit those exams. Quest are also very good sponsors for us and offer our PMINZ members great discounts in the Quest departments around the country. And SODA are the main tool for portfolio project or program management. There's a few other announcements. There's quite a number of events coming up over the next couple of months. So once we've finished with Project Management Awareness Month in September, we will look forward to the combined Australia and New Zealand virtual conference, which will be at the end of October. And a new set of speakers were announced today, so you can go to the website and see the latest news there. And then we will be having the National Project Management Awards in November. Now, nominations are currently open, and given this webinar tonight is about project management in the construction industry, I just wanted to mention there is a category specific for Construction Project of the Year award. So do consider your colleagues and your peers, and please feel free to submit some nominations. So that is all of the technical announcements. I'll hand you over to Kosam, our PMINZ president, who will be moderating tonight's session.
Thanks very much, Sharon, for the introduction and that part there. And welcome everyone to the webinar this evening. We hope it's going to be very interesting and very interactive as well. We've got a highly capable panel of experts here who will help us explain what the project management in the construction industry looks like and what their crystal balls tell them it's going to look like in the future. So if you have any questions, please use the chat function to type in your questions there. While we are having the panel discussion throughout, we will be looking at those questions. And then when it comes to question time, we will go through the questions in order of appearance. We will start off by having a 5-minute slot for each of the panelists so that they can touch on one part of tonight's topic, and then we'll have a panel discussion for another 15 minutes after that, and then we'll open that to the rest of the audience in the last 20 to 30 minutes. So I will graciously ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves because I can hardly do justice if I do that. I'll start off with Wallace. Will you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Kiara Koto. My name is Wallace Imodo Nibuma. I'm a lecturer at the Victoria University of Wellington. So I lecture down at the School of Architecture. So my primary role is training future project managers. I usually do carry out lots of research around building information modeling and also digital tools in the construction industry.
Thanks, Wallace. Donna, may you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Donna Howell. I'm not an academic. I'm a practitioner, a registered architect and certified project management professional. I also hold an Agile certification from PMI. And this year I've developed a bit of an interest in design thinking as a discipline, and I'm looking at how design thinking could be brought into the early stages of projects to assist with a more robust briefing process and value add at early stages. I'm also the PMI representative on the Construction Industry Council. Many of you probably aren't aware that we are members of the Construction Industry Council, and that's something I think we should look to leverage more going forward.
Thanks so much there, Donna. And last but not least, Fahime, will you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time joining this event. My name is Fahime Zairi. I'm coming from the background of engineering with almost 15 years experiences in construction and ICT sectors, delivering of the efficiency and improvement for the businesses and organization, including the academic background and deployment of the research in fieldwork study, and also driving the cultural changes, including the people, mindset, and process improvement, and data-driven culture, which is going to be part of the speaking, part of the points that I'm going to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Fahime. So to kick off tonight's discussion, I'll ask Donna to go through what she has for us tonight. Donna, over to you.
Thank you, Kossam. No pictures, I'm afraid. So I know both my colleagues on the panel have visual presentations to make, so don't panic about being bored without enough images to look at. And also I want to start with a bit of a disclaimer that this is really in my a bit of a state of the nation brain dump, I guess, my own personal observations about the industry and the role of project management in the construction industry currently. It's a topic I've spent a lot of time discussing with other practitioners as well, so I do feel like there is a reasonable amount of depth in these comments, and I hope I'm not going to be too controversial and offend anybody. So firstly, thinking about the current situation in the industry, I think there's a real lack of clarity around the role of the project manager and of project management as a discipline in the industry, and absolutely huge differences in skill sets from one PM to another. Some project managers are never involved during the construction phase, while others are only ever engaged during the construction phase. So you get a very different skill set and experience from one project manager to the next, and as those individuals progress through their careers and move from one organisation to another, those boundaries become increasingly blurred, and I think that creates a real issue in terms of the integrity of project management as a profession, and is something I wonder perhaps if we should distinguish between project management and construction management. So that's something to think about. I think consultants, particularly architects, see the function of project management as having been carved out of their scope. And they often view the role negatively, seeing the project management function as unnecessary person marking and feeling that the project manager is just getting in the way of their relationship with the client, which they believe leads to inferior project outcomes. And I think that is exacerbated by the variation in experience and competency that we see from one project manager to another. And I think clients are also confused about the role of the project manager. Client representatives who are interfacing with project teams often have a project management type job title, regardless of experience or competency. And as a result, I think real project management expertise isn't brought on early enough on many projects, or early enough in the project life cycle. And so project management consultants are often only getting involved at the same time as the rest of the consultant team, when much of the strategy and early real value add work has already been done. I think project management scope is very, very difficult to define, and increasingly difficult to define. There's no standard scope or agreement for services. What's actually required to manage a project differs substantially from one project to another, depending on a huge array of organisational and environmental factors. And current contract collateral is based around strict processes and stages that reflect traditional waterfall methodologies and are becoming less relevant. And the last point, observation on the current state of the discipline, is that there is obviously, we're all aware that there's a difference between leadership and management, and the term project management unfortunately implies a day-to-day control function as opposed to being about project leadership. I think project management as a discipline in the industry has traditionally been seen as being about monitoring and controlling, and has largely been performed by technical experts using traditional methodologies which are task oriented and relying on positional power. The future, I think we need to look at the role of PMINZ as a professional body, representative of project managers who are involved in the construction industry. I think, you know, it has been historically heavily skewed towards IT, and I'm not sure, it'd be interesting to get some feedback, how many project managers working in construction actually see PMINZ as a representative body for them, or advocating for them in the same way as other professional bodies do. And I do think that PMINZ needs to be much more visible and active in the construction space. I think membership of the Construction Industry Council is a really good start, and we need to really capitalise on that and leverage that. We need to be clearer about what it is that we do and how we add value, particularly at the very early stages of a project. I think the industry has a very limited view of the project life cycle and when it starts and when it finishes, and we need to look at broadening that out. We need to think about the way we're engaged, the way we are paid, and consider alternative models. Increasingly, clients are wanting to develop their own in-house capability rather than employ or commission external consultant PMs, and I wonder where the future is going to take us and what the long-term life is on project management consultancies. Automation and digital collaboration tools, obviously, and my colleagues are going to talk in more detail about those, are going to play an increasing part in project management and delivery, and we really need to be ready to grab hold of the opportunities that they present. I do think it's going to become increasingly difficult, as well as less important, for project managers in the construction industry to be technical experts, but we will need to be expert listeners and avid learners. We're going to need to be confident with hybrid practices and methodologies, and able to tailor our approach based on the specifics of each project. In my own work, I view my role as being that of a project leader, and I strive for a servant leadership approach. Servant leadership to me means a focus on facilitation and empowering increasingly diverse teams and individuals to excel. Increasing complexity in every aspect of our personal and professional lives will mean a focus on relationships, community, and collaboration will be key to successful project outcomes. We need to be ready to commit to lifelong learning, and in particular ongoing development of soft skills and emotional intelligence. Now, I'm particularly interested in the benefits and mechanisms of achieving psychological safety for optimal team performance. Nearly there. There's an increasing acknowledgement that almost every construction project is associated with significant organisational change for the client. I think we've always known that. I think we need to be more closely aligned with that change management function as they're becoming change management and project management an actual, you know, at the coalface, they are increasingly intertwined. With increasing organisational maturity in the project space, I think we're going to see more organisations with internal PMOs and a closer connection between projects and organisational strategy. And I personally hope that will mean earlier professional project management engagement and more support from clients for experimentation and innovation in the work that we do. So that's it for me. Hopefully there are a few things that grab your attention in there that will generate some discussions during our question and answer session.
Thanks very much there, Donna. You did paint quite an interesting picture, more on the gloomy side, which means that we need to do something about it. So I hope by the end of this evening, we'll have a few answers for the issues that you've raised. Over to you, Fahime, for your part of the conversation.
Yeah, it was quite interesting that majority of the start points was covered with what Donna pointed about the misunderstanding around the role of the project management and other challenges that we have got in construction sector around the uniqueness of the project's behavior in construction industry. The nature and operational behavior is certainly different from other industries. Comparing to manufacturing, for example, we know that construction sector is very human-centric and is dealing with lots of dynamic events. And as we know that project management practices always been around tracking, monitoring, reporting, but unfortunately, we are missing the opportunity of using the power of the data. That's why I picked up this area of the sharing the experiences and knowledge that how much we need to focus on data and business intelligence to improve our project management practices in construction sector. When we say that data and business intelligence, honestly, connecting it and relating it to the construction industry is not easy. Because of its nature, it's a really complicated transformation journey, culture-wise, mindset-wise, in terms of the availability of the time for resources. Imagine that one project manager has got massive responsibilities and needs to be on site and field works to deal with lots of changes in the construction site rather than coming and being available at the desk. So how we can support them to deliver efficiency and quality outcomes. That's the time that we need to think that our future needs a different language, needs data as a common language. Is like a musical notes to me. It means that using those information, quality and valid information to share with one another to lead the projects for measurable and quality outcomes, to drive a culture of proactive management and informed decisions making decisions based on the facts rather than based on the guess. And also, one of the challenging parts for the construction projects is stakeholders engagement and stakeholders management. When we have right data and information, of course, we can use them as a valid evidences and getting lots of benefits from them to manage our interactions with stakeholders. Another part that we can benefit using the data and business intelligence in construction area is managing the handover. handover has got its own requirements, and it's not just a handover in between different phases. I've been observing that even handover from one resource to another resource, how it is challenging and it's time consuming. Usually it goes halfway through and no quality with the information, because most of the time we say that we don't have enough information, or we are dealing with lack of data, or now that we are deploying lots of technology solutions that they are producing more than enough data for us, we don't know what are the valuable data for the handover. For every purpose, we need to understand what part of our data is going to be valuable for us. The quality of the data to be used for the transparency and visibility is going to benefit our future of the project management practices to enhance the communication and collaboration. So this is the journey that we need to go through, and definitely it is the transformation journey. It needs to be led and directed through the right direction. So I have got few points which, based on my experiences with the projects, in regards with the data culture, I wanted to share here some of the misunderstanding. Those become sort of the constraints and barriers in the transformation journey and in the uptake and adoption of the business intelligence. The first point is that majority of people, they think data is just for a specific group of people. It is just for a specific business units like ICT or finance. Then the rest of people, they forgot how to use the value of data. My recommendation is to change this mindset and start thinking about every single project as a business, and thinking that data needs to be treated as the asset for the business. So we can connect our people with those assets and sharing the information through the valuable data. The next point is, as I said, technology solutions. We have got a lot of technology solutions at the moment, a lot of systems that they are collecting and capturing data for us. But we are aware that construction is dealing with lots of uniqueness behaviors, how much those technology solutions are flexible to collect the data required for different projects, or collect the data from different dimensions that are required for project management practices in one place. We know that we don't have that powerful tools yet. We have got multiple tools that they are collecting and capturing the information in different silos, and those silos are sitting individually and no bridge in between them yet. So these points, all of them, making it sort of the awareness for our construction industry that we need to educate our people, our community, for the future of this industry. If we want to operate smarter and we want to improve the productivity, we need first understand these sort of we need to correct our thinking about data and technology, how they are serving our industry and what we can get out of them. Another misunderstanding, which is affecting the quality of data, is data literacy. Data literacy is very poor, especially in construction projects. Some of the organizations or public sectors, they are improving a lot around the data literacy, but still in construction projects, we are missing this opportunity. So we need to move towards that and understanding that data literacy is going to be more related to our gatekeepers, whoever looking after data entry for us. If they don't know what they are doing, they won't be able to capture the data into the right place, into the right format, into the right structure. So moving towards the data-driven culture is not all about having the data in place. Okay, so this is a big gap that sometimes we say that, yeah, we invested on the technology, and how you are not getting the insights for your business. We have got this technology, we have got this system, we have got these tools, and we have got one function called as exporting the report. So why that report is not benefiting you? This is again back to the technology solutions that they are set up in different silos. They are not integrated. This is another additional step for us when we are thinking about development, the data-driven culture. We need to move towards the right direction where we are building the report to make them, to use them as enabler tools. I usually introduce reports as performance enablers, as tools for making informed decisions. They should be really informative and actionable. And behind that building of the reports, there is an art of the logic, where business intelligence is coming to help us connecting all of those processes, strategies, and bringing the consistent measurement and right logic in place. So if we want to achieve a right report, quality report, this is the place, this is the step that we need to automate our report, think that who are our audiences and how to design the reports. The last message from me is gonna be thinking that how we want to share the reports. Most of us still we go with the typical traditional approach of sharing the reports in individual tab and secure them for specific groups only. We are not giving the multi-dimensional view or multi-dimensional picture. That's where we are missing the opportunities. So to end up with the right level of the reporting, we have to come with the right design for the dashboard. The value of the dashboards is a lot for our business and our project, because it's gonna help different people from different area of the business to become familiar with what is happening in the rest of the project, and also understanding the interrelationship from one area to the other areas. So this is again another awareness that we can gain from the information and data that has been shaped into the right message, valuable message. I'm going to share one image here, which is the analytical maturity model. And that image is going to help us to assess our organization, understanding that where we are in terms of the maturity and how we are using the reports. Hope that is working. This is coming from Gartner. Is that working there? Yep. Okay, so this is the analytics maturity model that is talking about different capability of the reports. Majority of us still we are at the early phases and using our reports just to review the past. In construction industry, probably most of us we are familiar with the lessons learned review reports, which those reports are just reviewing the history and they are not leading us toward the future. The advanced reporting and descriptive reporting, predictive reporting are sort of the reports that we need to come across the maturity of our data and analytical models to enable our organization and our projects to gain more benefits out of the data. Hopefully that's interesting topic, and I'm happy to take any further questions for that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Fahime. That was very insightful. I'll move on to Wallace so that we can open up the conversation later. Wallace?
All right, thanks, Kosam. I'll just share my screen. So I just wanted to start off my talk on the impact of technology quotient around project managers. So it's quite low. If you look at the PMI report on the technology awareness and also upskilling and training, these are quite low as well, with a few shortfall within expectations within the industry. So the video you're seeing now is a sort of a co-design project in terms of meeting and engaging stakeholders for them to be able to see a before and after effect of their project delivery beforehand. So this technology really stimulates the stakeholder management key knowledge area of project management, and just to really get everyone conscious in the room about what types of technology you've engaged with in the past 1 year to 5 years, and also how much are you looking forward to improve within your technology learning. Also within the industry as well, something we picked up from the education awareness webinar last week was on having what we call one of the panelists identified as accidental project managers. So when we have people coming into project management specifically for construction without having that adequate knowledge, background on construction sequencing and all that goes into the construction process. So how much upskilling and training have you been engaging with? And also looking at the shift from traditional construction to a common data environment. I'm happy Fahime touched on data. Yeah, so moving to a common data environment, we can now see that from early phase right up to execution and up to the handover phase, data keeps growing. And so it now boils down on the PM to be able to interact with such data within different technology platforms. So an example of such technology platform will be within the virtual reality, and also things like UAV, where you fly drones, you carry out LiDAR scans. So I believe we cannot really stop learning. So as a PMI, we really need to upskill towards learning and adapting to new technologies. So other forms of technologies as well, which are worthy of mention, are things like moving towards smart contracts. So this deals with what you talk about procurement aspects of the key knowledge areas. Then other areas as well, which I would like to really emphasize on, is on technology in terms of CPM. So lots of what we observe within the PMI profession mostly focuses on CPM. So if we look at some of the, sorry, I just finished, stop sharing, get back to the room. So when you look at some of the CPM plannings and scope, so in construction, there are other techniques such as location-based management, where you work on with real life BIM models. So I believe with all these skills, a PM, a project manager really needs to start picking up some of all these tools in the industry. And other uses of data as well, if you look at on the FM part, which Fahime touched on. So for facilities management and handing over phase, now you have what you call the employer information requirements, EIR. So you really need to be able to understand what goes into the data, both from the front end before the handing over phase. And basically my talk today was just focused on mostly the technology aspect. So other things I get, so because I started off with duty information modeling, so sometimes I try to keep a balance between BIM and project management. So for the training in education, because I believe we are also a source of training for future project managers. So what I do within my courses, try to put in lots of this technology use. So I intend to have students working, project management students work with LiDAR scanners, make arrangements for actual site visits to site. So I believe it's quite important for them to be in touch with the industry with that real life site experience. And also another aspect of training and improving the technology side is having industry guest speakers. So practitioners and project managers with their PMP certification come in and share their experiences and challenges within real life construction projects. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's most from me, and I'll pass it back to Kosam.
Thanks very much, there, Wallace. Very interesting video with nice graphics there. We'll just move on to the question and answer session and discussion as we go. So if you can type in your questions, that would be good. We have one question there from Mahela. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. The question is, which systems do you have in mind for analyzing data and reporting it? I guess this one would go to Fahime.
So depending on the governance policies around the data and information, usually I noticed that in New Zealand, majority of business and organization, they have rights to use the spreadsheet, the first thing, you know, but how they are using it, it's another level of the knowledge and education. Some of them, they blame that a spreadsheet is not the right tool, but for processing and development of the dashboards. Now these days, it has got a lots of adds in. And for example, the data analysis that we can build up through the data modeling as it adds in inside of the Excel spreadsheet is very helpful, and it's very handy for the integration of different data from different dimensions. In terms of the visualization, of course, Power BI is the right tool, again, depending on your governance requirements. If you have SAP system, for example, it sounds that you need to apply for additional licenses to use the SAP integrated into the Power BI. So depending on the capacity and on the policies, different tools benefit organization in different ways. But the first and most popular one, of course, is Excel spreadsheet, but it needs to definitely to be used in the really a smart way. And also Tableau is another tool which is part of the business intelligence tools. So I would recommend have a look at those because they are quite smart when it's come to connecting the financial information with the progression analysis and deliverables, different dimensions.
Right, thanks, Fahime. Nice answer. The next question, I think, is for Wallace, and it's from John. The question is, how widespread is the use of BIM in New Zealand construction?
All right, so for BIM, because I also sit on a BIM education, national BIM education working group, mostly made up of academics across all the tertiary institutions in New Zealand. So that the group sits under the BIM Acceleration Committee for New Zealand. So from the last eBOS report, you could see that there's lots of increase in terms of use of BIM. So somewhere about over 30% are looking at using, clients are looking at using BIM and integrating to the facilities management end, which is quite promising, because some of the ideas around BIM is that it's meant for the whole life cycle. Because initially, when you start off with BIM level 1, you have the use of just separate disjointed BIM models from different parties. Then when you move on to BIM level 2, you now start having full integration within the teams. And by BIM level 3, you further integrate those systems into things like GIS. You could start creating a smart report, smart monitoring systems. So I believe BIM in New Zealand currently will sit somewhere around BIM level 2, which we're still pushing and trying our best to make sure we have lots of awareness on adoption of BIM. And I believe, yeah, so project managers should really be looking towards, your role might not really involve on the technical aspects, such as knowledge on interoperability of various proprietary softwares, or working within an industry foundation class and IFC formats. But I believe the knowledge, if you are within the room where you are having project meetings or reporting to various other teams across the globe. So it's quite important for you to have some background knowledge on how these systems work.
Thanks there, Wallace. And if you have a video that you can turn on, please do so. We want to see your faces. We're getting tired of seeing our own faces. So please turn them on if you can. Donna, do you have anything to add on what Wallace has said from your experience?
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties or hurdles for a greater uptake of BIM in New Zealand is the number of SMEs that make up the industry. So there's a reasonably high capital outlay that's required. But if you look at architectural practices, for example, the majority are employ 1, 2, 3 people, and so there's that sort of hurdle to get over. And the same goes for contractors. So we've got more individual organisations at the very small end, and that does create a bit of a challenge for increasing uptake. But it is becoming increasingly a normal expectation. Yeah, particularly on larger complex projects.
Right, thanks there, Donna. Right, the next question there, I think, would be for Fahime, because you touched on smart contracts. And this is from John. The question is, any good examples of smart contracts being used in New Zealand? Fahime? Oh, that's good.
In terms of the data and business intelligence, is that the question for a smart contracts related to the, it could be for Donna, I think, or?
Could I contribute on the smart contracts?
Yes, please.
So for smart contracts, so from, I'm not really engaged in smart contracting, but from my reading, so it involves lots of algorithm, which goes into analyze various contractors in terms of bidding. So this really goes in and drills down into lots of all the background information which we are aware of that contracting teams needs to submit for bid. So it goes into the system, and you have all this algorithm which goes in similar to things like what you have for Bitcoin. I don't know if most people trade with Bitcoin. Yeah, so at the back end, they go into using lots of these algorithms. But for New Zealand, I've not really seen that sort of level of sophistication. Yeah, because currently we are also looking at automating the building consent process. So when you submit drawings to the local council, we want to really see how we can automate that process in a way that now you are able to submit your BIM models instead of traditional paper drawings. So these BIM models goes through a system. There was a automated system developed by a researcher in Auckland, AkaBIM. So it goes through that system, and the results now are linked to the building clauses, the building code. So once you have a tick and it's approved, but one disadvantage of the system is that you still need human intervention to really go over some of those outputs. Yeah. So I've not really had any experience or seen any smart contract at that level. So maybe other panelists may have, Donna may have ahead of something with smart contracts.
Nothing to add, really. I think, yeah, I'm not sure. One of my concerns, I guess, with technology uptake is that someone's always got to be at the bleeding edge of this, and often the expectations of clients and contractors are not well aligned with what is actually reasonably possible, or what are the risks involved. So yeah, we think there's more work to be done.
Right. Thanks for that, Donna and Wallace and Fahime. So the next question here is from Franco. It is about data. What data do you want to collect? Is it cost, quality, and time? And there's also a comment there that says most data sets are in IP in construction and will be shared reluctantly to the public. So in other words, it will be very difficult to get hold of that. Do you have any comments on that?
Yep, that's all about the governance and how we have got that policy in place, how far in we can share the data and information. I know that in between the projects that we usually agree that up to the certain point, we are going to share this level of the information with the stakeholders. Up to this level, we are going to share with the internal teams. So it doesn't necessarily to be shared and publicized all of the information, but how internal team is gonna get the most use of the power of the data is very important. What I pointed in my speaking tonight was mainly about become data-driven internally. It's different from the level of sharing and publicizing the information. It's like saying that government agencies, when it's come to OIA, how they want to deal with those information. So of course there are some confidentiality levels and it should not be publicized, but how we are building the reports and layouts and how we are architecting them, we are going to design them considering all of those limitations. But definitely for the internal theme, we are leaving them open as much as we can to bring that attention and sharing the right level of the information with them. Hope that helps with the question.
Hey, thanks, Fahime. The next question there is directed to Donna. How do you see the project management process aiding the design coordination phase to ensure high quality coordinate construction drawing? And will this aid in ownership of documents in New Zealand by consultants? That's the question.
That's a big question. And I'm reading all sorts of things into that. I think there are a number of issues with design, documentation, coordination, and it comes back. I alluded to it just before when I said that we need to make sure that our expectations are realistic, and we're not expecting a level of detailed coordination using BIM just because it's possible. Because it might be possible but not realistic in terms of cost, or it might there might be an 80-20 rule, or so I've had issues in the past with there being an expectation that every junction on the building will be modelled at a level of detail that would mean consultancies would have to engage overseas teams of drafts of technicians to do that work, and you've got to look at it and say, well, how much benefit are we getting for that? So I think it comes down to making sure that the consultant scopes in terms of their contracts are really well dovetailed, so that everybody's got aligned expectations in terms of how much detail is going to be in the model and how much information will be transmitted and shared amongst the team members in a BIM, in a model, an electronic model, as opposed to hard copy documentation. And my most recent project experience, it's been a mix of the two, but we've often then found that the quantity surveyor has been expecting a higher level of detail in the model because they're looking to use automated approaches for their estimating. So I think we're going to make sure that our expectations are aligned, and that we really are doing comprehensive planning at the beginning around what we're going to produce, how much it's going to cost the client, and how much risk or how much value we're getting from that. There's usually a sweet spot in there. Yeah, but it's a difficult one, and I don't think we've yet got it right. And I think there are some other side issues there as well that are less directly about BIM and design coordination, and more about the way we go about costing or the lowest cost model of procurement of consultants, and what that does to their ability to coordinate to the extent that we might expect.
Right, thanks there, Donna. This is another one for you, and it sort of touches a little bit on what you've just said. Maybe you might need to just add a few more words there. So this one is from Peter. Peter says, Donna's comments in particular resonated with me. The scope of the various project managers' roles and capability is so important. The question is, do you see a best practice model for management / leadership of client and consultants / contractors through design and construction?
I don't think there is a single best practice model. I think that increasingly we are going to need to be tailoring our models to suit specific projects, specific clients, specific environments. I think the most important thing for me is early engagement. You know, we're all, I think there's a bit of confusion around the application of PMBOK, say, to the construction industry projects, and how the project management life cycle maps onto a construction project. And really, to me, by the time you are in design and construction, you're actually executing. So the planning and the initiation stage and the planning stage should already have occurred by that point. But as project managers, consultant project managers, we're never there until we start execution. And I think that we need to change that. We need to challenge the client's thinking around that and make sure that we're involved at the initiation stage and in the planning stage where we can really add value. I think that's the most important change that we need to see in terms of that model for management and leadership through the design and construction phases.
Thanks for that answer, Donna. The next one I think is for Fahimi. It's from Mark, and Mark asks, data becomes information when analyzed or interrogated, and when applied becomes knowledge. The question is, should we be striving for useful information and knowledge from the data gathered? If so, what data should be gathered?
That's very valid questions, because when we are talking about the systems and technology, as I said, these days, we might have even more than enough data. But what are the most valuable part of those data that needs to be touched for processing and analyzing and measurement is all depending on the behavior and nature of the project. And usually at the earliest step, when we are setting up the project scope and project requirements, so we need to start to understand what we want to define as a system metrics for our projects. The typical data that we need to have it, the common data that we need to definitely record them, either manually or coming from any of the tools that we have got them available in the project, are related to the real cost, which is different from the budget. We have got some of the financial system that they are capturing the information in related with the budgeting of the project, and we need to update them for the forecasting. That's different from the real cost. We need to have additional places for capturing the real cost, because there are always additional information around the cost. What are the elements in related to every single expenses, categorizing those expenses, time, milestones, deliverables, critical tasks, risks, changes, issues, and data in regards with the resourcing. I have noticed that we have a massive gap in terms of the resourcing data. We are not registering the resources. And when it's come to review the procurement strategy to understand how effectively we are utilizing our resources, we don't have that much enough and valuable information. Another source of the data could come from our project management approaches, which Lean implementation is an example that I can bring it over, and saying that based on the lean culture, we usually go with a 5 whys approach, and that 5 whys approach is going to tell us the root causes. So the information related to the causes for any non-deliverables, for any constraints, for any failures is going to be discovered there, and we need to have them in the right place because it's going to add a lot of value for our analyzing and measurements.
Right, thanks there, Fahime. Our time is almost up. Maybe we'll just go through the last couple of questions. One is from Franco to Donna and Wallace. How many architects use BIM to the extent where this automated consenting will be able to be used?
Wallace, I'm keen to hear from you on that before I jump in with my comments. What do you think?
It's a touchy subject because you don't really want to question professional architects about their BIM drawings, yeah. But in most cases, from my experience, you really need a BIM technician to really come in and inspect the model to make sure some of the components are really connecting properly. An example, I give an example, is where you have maybe 2 floors. So in some BIM drawings, you have walls going straight up to the roof. So ideally within, so it looks nice, it looks beautiful when you do such designs, but when you go into things like scheduling, so when you want to do a programming, in real life, you can't have that wall going all through a slab or floor plate and going up to the roof. So these are issues where BIM technicians could go in and pick some of those areas. And then also designing special objects, so model objects within spaces. So these are some other issues as well. But just for the automated process, Singapore is currently carrying out such automation processes. And also, I believe Finland also has some of these features as well. So it's not really impossible. It's just for every stakeholder to really upskill, and in terms of that push towards technology adoption. So one thing is for the consultants to have these BIM drawings. Then you also need to look at the consenting office as well. So the local council, who are the consenting officers, what are their technology quotient around BIM use and understanding BIM models and the source of data that needs to go into your BIM model that will be read by the automated checking system. Yeah, so it's I think it's everyone has to contribute their parts. Yeah.
Okay, thanks there, Wallace. The last question, which you may answer very quickly there, Fahime, if you've got the answer. The question is from Henry, and the question is, in which phase of construction projects the data is more important or should be prioritized?
I think I covered this in my previous answer. Data should be collected from the early phase.
Right, thank you.
No way to miss the opportunity. Yeah.
Right, thank you. So to round this off, I guess one thing that others might want to hear is what sort of upskilling do they need to do to become effective construction project managers? And also, do they really need to study the code, or is it something that is optional? So if you can just do one last round and just answer these two, and then we can wrap it off. Starting off with Donna.
So sorry, Kasim, just repeat the question.
The question is, if somebody wants to upskill or maybe translate his skills from being a non-construction project manager into becoming a construction project manager, what sort of skills do they need, or certifications or education that they would need to achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the past, project managers in the construction industry have tended to have backgrounds in engineering or architecture, mainly engineering, and that's had a lot to do with the fact that traditionally the focus has really been on monitoring and controlling. I think that the PMI qualification is definitely the best place to start if you want to to move into project management, because every other, I guess I see that as a sort of a first principles qualification, and any other training or methodologies or practices that you look at hang off that in some way. So that, I would say, that's where you would want to start. And then I think the focus is really on leadership and soft skills, emotional intelligence, team building. You want to become a leader rather than a doer, and that's where you want to focus your development.
Right, thanks there, Donna. Does anybody else in the panel want to add on that before we close?
I think
Okay,
I agree with Donna. Yeah, so the PMP is really a good place to start off. So in my role as volunteering as the academic outreach lead, which is a new position within PMI. So we have lots of queries and inquiries about a pathway towards certification, especially from the educational point of view. So students carrying out studies or upskilling in, say, a diploma or a certification in project management course. So they're really interested in a pathway towards becoming a much more professional project manager. So I agree with Donna on that.
Right, thanks there, Wallace. Fahima, do you have anything to add before we close?
I do agree that leadership is the best pathway to be improved, and anyone looking, to bring better practices on the top of the PMP, I think they need to learn more about the leadership, which is going to be probably different courses, because dealing with people, as I said, that's a human-centric, people-centric industry. It's very important.
Thanks very much, Fahima. I guess we have all got a lot of good points there. I see there's another question there about how to register on the PMI side. So I'll leave that to Sharon when she closes off to talk about that. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening, and I hope we all got something from tonight's session. It was by no means exhaustive, but it's meant to stimulate more conversation in this and to get that going and raise that awareness. And as an organization, we'll always be there for you to help out if you need to ask any questions or anything. And thanks very much to our expert panel, Donna, Wallace, and Fahima, for providing those insights and advice and the like into what's happening and what they see is possible in the future to make this industry a more successful industry. And I'll now hand you over back to Sharon, our host. Over to you, Sharon.
Yes, thank you. And just to, I was really looking forward to this session. We had a run through a couple of nights ago, and the discussion, even at the practice session, was really interesting, and it's developed into a really great, what I would see as a start of a conversation that we need to be continuing. And I want to go right back to the point that you raised right at the beginning, Donna, of being more visible. I would be really interested, before we go, if people want to put in the chat if they would be interested in PMI hosting perhaps more detailed sessions. This is a bit of a starter for 10 with a few tasters, but perhaps Fahima could talk for a whole session just on data, I'm sure, and many other topics, perhaps in more detailed. So if you're interested in that, please pop it in the chat before you go. In PMI, we can certainly look at getting speakers and conducting more detailed webinars moving forward. And as General Manager, I certainly will be following up with Donna and having some interesting discussions on what we can do to be more involved with the construction industry for sure. On that note, I'd just like to say thank you very much. Don't forget to pop in the chat if you want more detailed sessions and in relation to construction, particularly a particular topic. And everyone have a very good evening and thanks for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.